Good morning. Let me officially welcome you all to ICUR 2023. My name is Donna Llewellyn. I'm the Executive Director of the Institute for Inclusive and Transformative Scholarship at Boise State, IFITS. You're all going to have to help me because you've heard me say this before, at least some of you have. In IFITS, we like to say IFITS, you fits,
we all
fits. Thank you. And I have the honor of sharing the planning committee for this conference. So let me tell you just a little bit about ICUR and what to expect. It is our annual gathering of student researchers and their research mentors and other community and family members from around the state for 2 days of professional development, research presentations, networking, basically celebrating the scholarly community in which we all live, thrive, and grow. So pre-COVID, I know we're getting tired of saying that, we would gather at Boise State in the Student Union Building, and next year we are going to do that again. So we are really looking forward to that. We had some date conflicts this year, and so we're back on Zoom. But those of you who are not from the Treasure Valley, you did not have to travel here. You're more comfortable at home, hopefully. But unfortunately, we're not breaking bread together other than the folks at ISU, which is wonderful that they are. I like to look at this through a positive lens, is that we are actually all here. We didn't have to leave our families behind. And you can have families join in with you if you'd like. We're going to record some of these sessions. So if you can't join us, or you have people you want to share this with, we'll be sharing the recordings. We will not be sharing any of the recordings of breakout rooms because we like those to be a little more interactive and authentic. The student posters are on the 4Waves platform. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Those will remain there. So even after the conference formally ends, so you can share them with a broader audience. We've had 3 separate in-person receptions, and so we have had a little bit of in-person mingling. And so, as I said, mark your calendars next year, July 22nd and 23rd on the Boise State campus in person. So I'm going to ask that you all attend this conference with a little bit of grace. At some point, the technology will fail, or there'll be some other kind of problem. There always is. Those of you who've been doing research, you understand everything does not always go the way that you actually plan it to go. And so I ask that you have some patience, attend with the best of spirit and intent. Really, we just want to celebrate undergraduate research in all its forms and to be inspired and to learn together. So at this time, I would like to honor the Boise Valley people. The original inhabitants are from the Burns Paiute, Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs, the Fort McDermott Paiute, the Shoshone Paiute, and the Shoshone Bannock. It is upon their traditional and customary lands that some of us reside and call home, and upon which our Boise State campus sits. Okay, let's see here. Let me get over here. So, we've already done all that. Here we go. I want to actually thank the committee. This conference takes a large group of people and a lot of time. We, as a matter of fact, will start planning next year's conference next week. So we meet annually across the whole year to plan this. So the people on this screen all helped and continue to help put together this conference. So really express my appreciation publicly to everybody who has helped. A special call out to the IFITS team, and especially to Jocelyn Colors, who behind the scenes with all the work with submissions and registrations and emails and figuring out any kind of technical glitch, and really is the mastermind behind the scenes, all the databases. And so really thank you, Jocelyn. And, thank you to the rest of the team, to Lavanya and to Megan for working on the websites and to arranging, Megan, all the communications and logistics, and Nico, everybody. Just, it has been, and Erica for yesterday's reception, and really everybody has been amazing. So let me tell you a little bit about how many people we have at this event. Someone asked that question. We have a total of 196 posters that will be presented tomorrow on 4Waves. As of 9 o'clock this morning, we had 423 people register for the conference. That represents 47 different institutions, including 240 undergraduate students, 113 faculty and staff, 16 high school students. Kudos to you getting a head start on this. 32 graduate students and 22 family, friends, other community members, industry, government. And so really broad representation, and we really appreciate that. We also could not do this without our sponsors. So the Higher Ed Research Council of the Idaho State Board of Education generously supports ICUR each year as part of their support for undergraduate research. We also have all three universities of the research public universities have really leaned in and supported this conference. I want to say that we also had sponsors for some of the in-person receptions. I thanked our sponsors yesterday. And in addition, I need to call out the library, who always helps with printing of posters when people need posters printed. But we also had local eateries helping to sponsor. Next, I need to thank our students. You have spent the summer learning new ways of thinking and creating, connecting with mentors in different ways, and finding out how to be a scholar or developing into a more developed scholar if you were already doing research before this summer. So I want to take a minute and everybody call out and say congratulations. I mean, way to go. It's wonderful to have you in this community of scholars. Next, I want to thank the mentors, because without mentors, we don't have undergraduate research. And so heartfelt gratitude goes to all the research mentors. On top of everything else that you do, you still found the time and space to mentor our undergrads in research. You made a difference in the lives of students. You helped them chart a new path forward. And really and truly, I can't overstate how important your work is and how grateful we are. When students submitted their posters, we asked if they would like to add a few words of appreciation about the impact of their mentors. And we asked if we could share those. And so I'm gonna read off a few of these, and it's always a struggle to pick, not have the next hour of just reading mentor statements because they're so heartwarming. But I picked out sort of a variety from the different institutions. So bear with me and let's celebrate these mentors. Dr. Moshe Sadeh guided me to see the bigger picture about research and how to think outside the box. Thank you for your wisdom. And that was from a Boise State student. Another Boise State student wrote, my deepest thanks to Dr. Leonora Biddleston for her confidence in me, her encouragement, and her kindness. She facilitated a place for me to grow as a scientist, make my own mistakes, and come up with my own ideas while supporting me throughout the entire journey. A student who's doing research at CASE and INL wrote, Eric Jankowski was a fabulous mentor that stayed in constant contact with me throughout the summer. He truly cared not only about how my research was going, but also about my educational and career goals. A College of Idaho student wrote, Carolyn Databay has been my research advisor for over a year, and she has taken a tremendous amount of time and energy to cultivate the researcher in me. I strive to do as she does in my future. College of Southern Idaho student wrote, my mentor has played an instrumental role in the support of my research. He encouraged me to think more critically and to be more concerned about the process rather than the outcome. College of Western Idaho student wrote, I appreciate the support and knowledge my mentors offered this summer. I'm looking forward to an opportunity to continuing work in the lab. An Idaho State student wrote, my mentor instilled within me an excitement for research that I would not have had otherwise. Their passion for finding knowledge was infectious and is something I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. A Lewis Clark State College student wrote, Dr. Nancy Johnston goes above and beyond to make sure her undergraduate students receive research opportunities they're not likely to get anywhere else throughout the entire year. Her dedication and love for her work and students is inspiring, encourages us all to find our unique talents that we can pursue. A Northwest Nazarene student wrote, "My mentor was tremendously helpful at every step of the way. This made the research process fun and extremely rewarding for my overall experience." A University of Idaho student wrote, "My mentor is so incredibly patient. I appreciate his willingness to share his expertise with me and encourage me to believe in myself." The student doing research at USGS wrote, "My mentors have been welcoming and engaging with me as if I were part of the team. They acknowledge me and allow me to pose my own questions and answers to the group." And the following quote, I'm not going to identify as where it came from because I think it really sums up what we just heard in a lot of these, is "Thank you for believing in me." And so really and truly, thank you, mentors. You did more than just help students learn new skills. You really helped them become a scholar and have set them on a path. So thank you. Okay, some tips for enjoying and getting the most out of a virtual conference. I feel like we wrote some of these 3 years ago when it was not usual to attend a virtual conference, but I'm going to go through them because for some of you, this still might be your first virtual conference. Try to really attend the conference, and that might mean turning off all the other devices. Keep the device on that you're actually on this conference. Close out of other windows, concentrate on the session you're attending. Fully participate, ask questions, utilize the chat box. Someone here will always be monitoring it. Get questions to the speakers, take notes, engage fully. We have breaks built in, use them. Deal with email, family, get food, drink, fresh air. Okay, a reminder that the posters will be on the 4Waves platform. We'll talk more about that tomorrow. They are already live. If you want to get a preview tonight, posters to see tomorrow. Everybody who registered should have received email about that. And so someone else, I think I've seen some links going up in chat out of my side view. And so look at the links there as you need them. We will be doing at the end of each of today and tomorrow a drawing for some Starbucks gift cards. And so stay through for the closing, and they'll be available for anybody as a winning prize for sticking out throughout the day. Okay, so let's do a little bit of preview of what's to come. Here is a quick preview of what we're going to do today. It is a chock full day. We are going to, as soon as I stop talking, we're going to have a welcome plenary. We're going to have some lightning talks from students that were nominated by their faculty to give a 3-minute lightning talk. Then we'll have a networking session. Networking is one of these things that students always ask for, but it's really hard to do. And some of us are afraid of it. So we're going to have a really low-key and welcoming networking session with a bunch of faculty from across the state. Then we'll have a couple of panel sessions, one especially for faculty around the different flavors of undergraduate research. How do you engage undergrads in research? And then one for graduate students. Then we invite the graduate students actually to go to that one too, because one day you're going to want to mentor undergrads. And one for our undergrads, who we've invited some alumni who are working out in the workplace, in industry, et cetera, to talk about what all those types of opportunities are like and what their pathways have been. And yes, all those sessions will be in Zoom. We're going to do the breakout rooms from here. Then we're going to have a panel of students, alumni who have gone on to graduate school, who will be able to talk about what it's like in graduate school. What's a day like in graduate school? How did you get in? What did you do? And then we'll have a short closing session. Then tomorrow we will come back bright and early, and we'll have a session called Paired Research Talks, where we have 3 teams from each of our 3 public research universities talking about how they did research together, what research they did, how the undergrad got involved in the project. A great session there where you can hear the 2 talking together. And then we have our poster sessions. Those are on 4Waves. We'll do an introduction to 4Waves so that you all know how to operate around there. We'll do our poster sessions, and then we'll come back to Zoom for a closing session. Okay, let me do a quick run through of just some basic Zoom etiquette and things that we've learned through the years. So first of all, to alleviate background noise, you all came in muted. Unless we ask you to unmute, please stay muted so that we don't hear any background noise. Use the chat box for questions, issues. A bunch of us are monitoring the chat box. You should get a response, and use it also for questions. Often when there's a single speaker, the speaker view is a great way to look at it. That way you can see the slide and just the speaker, and not have your little Brady box, all the different boxes showing up. And please do share your enthusiasm, praise, etc., using all the reactions. It's really hard to give a talk to a Zoom box. You're looking at a bunch of black boxes or a blank screen, and you don't have that audience feedback that you get when you're giving a talk in person. So please do help our speakers along by using those reactions and letting them know that you're listening and that you're excited by what they're saying. Okay, so here's just a few, in case you haven't found them yet. There's the mute, there's the speaker view, there's the chat, and there's the reactions. Okay, at this point, I get to introduce our morning keynote speaker. And I want to thank a member of our organizing committee, our planning committee, and Alphonse for recommending and nominating our speaker. And so George Fenton is a senior policy analyst at the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, a nonpartisan research and advocacy organization in Washington, D.C. His prior policy experience includes an internship at the Treasury Department and 2 years as a research assistant at the Federal Reserve Board. George completed his economics PhD, so it's Dr. George Fenton, at the University of Michigan, where his fields were labor and public economics, and his dissertation included research on what shapes people's preferences for taxation and redistribution in an era of rising income inequality. George grew up in Idaho, graduated summa cum laude from Boise State with a BA in economics and minor in mathematics. So please help me welcome George while I stop sharing so that George can share his screen. Over to you, George. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Can you all see my screen? Yes. Okay. Are we in full screen? Try. There. How's that? Great. Okay. Cool. Thanks again, Donna. Good morning, everyone. I have to say, just taking a quick look at some of the topics and projects you all are working on has been intriguing and inspiring for me. So it's a real honor to be with you this morning. So I'm going to aim to talk for 10 or 15 minutes and save some time for questions or discussion. At the end, I'll begin with a bit about my path to research work. And then I thought, in the spirit of kicking off a research conference, I'd share a couple pieces of a couple of my dissertation chapters that I thought were particularly fun to visualize, and then close with some research lessons. So like I said, I'm going to target 10 or 15 minutes. If I ramble, please don't be shy about cutting me off to keep us on schedule. Okay, so much of this you just heard. I grew up in Post Falls, went to Post Falls High School, came to Boise State not knowing what I wanted to do, chose economics and a math minor, and that included doing undergraduate research with Professor Hawley in the economics department, and then an internship at the Treasury Department here in DC. And that experience solidified my interest in policy and the policy world. So I, after college, spent 2 years as a research assistant at the Federal Reserve Board, which you may know from the news, or a class commonly just as the Fed, which is our central bank, controls monetary policy. I had a wonderful experience there, but learned, among other things, that I did not want to be a macroeconomist, which was a surprise to me. I'll circle back to what lesson that might hold at the end. So I went to the University of Michigan for my PhD, where my fields were labor and public finance. I'm going to show a bit about a project from each of those fields in a moment. And I'm now at the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. So I heard a journalist describe us recently as the least sexy but most effective think tank in Washington. So we are a policy research and advocacy organization dedicated to policies to broaden economic opportunity and limit inequality. Okay, so a bit of my research in the last several years. My dissertation spanned many subjects. One of them was television. So Bob Putnam is a political scientist, wrote a book you may have heard of called Bowling Alone, about the decline of community in America. So he has a chapter in there about TV where he says, here we must begin with the most fundamental fact about the impact of television on Americans, and that is that nothing else in the 20th century so rapidly and profoundly affected our leisure. The economist Matthew Genskow says the fact that even in 1950, the average TV household was watching for 4.5 hours per day makes clear what a dramatic improvement TV was over previous entertainment technologies. So looking at this, just the descriptive data, I was astounded at these time use figures, right? How quickly, how many Americans were spending so much time with TV. And that got me thinking about the many kind of social and economic effects that might have. And in order to estimate those effects, one strategy that researchers used is to exploit the fact that when TV was rolling out across the US, it hit different towns and cities and counties at different times. And partly for random reasons due to some kind of regulatory shocks that helped create kind of plausible treatment and control groups, right? So if Boise gets TV in 1953 and another otherwise similar city gets it in 1957, that's some useful variation to use, right? But to do that, you need to know who got TV when. And as I look more closely at this, I found, somewhat to my surprise, that there were no measurements of direct TV signal reach during the rollout. So the existing literature was using an approximation to coverage with current, so like from the 2000s, commercial market areas, or they're called DMAs. So everything we know about what the rollout of TV did, how it affected voter turnout, how it affected kids' test scores. So this is the does TV rot your brain question. How did it affect polarization, smoking, newspaper circulation, consumer culture? All of this was based on these approximations that may have had some measurement error in them. So set off to try and calculate actual signal reach in decibels using something called the irregular terrain model, the ITM, which calculates at a given receiving location the signal strength of a broadcast just as a function of the tower's characteristics and the topography between the tower and the receiving location. But to do that, had to undertake a substantial data digitization process. So got a small grant to hire a couple undergraduate research assistants to do exactly what I did at Boise State, which is to digitize data, which is unsexy but often critical work to getting these projects in motion. So we got these TV fact books, stacks and stacks of them, which was a trade publication published beginning in 1948. And I have a screenshot here of an example from Boise's Channel 2. And you can see it's got all those technical characteristics, right? So we have channel and frequency, the visual and oral power, latitude and longitude, height, start date. So digitize these. In 1948, there were 42 stations on air. By the end of our sample in 1960, 570 commercial broadcasts. So what does this look like? So here's a heat map of TV signal strength by county in the United States, starting in 1948. The red areas watchable, the blue areas were not, and the lighter white areas were marginal. You can see this is going to fill out over the years. And from 1952 to 54, you're going to see a large discrete leap forward, and that's because the FCC put a licensing freeze in place for a few years while it sorted out some spectrum allocation issues. And this creates really useful variation for researchers, right? Because it's exogenous, so helps us to produce a natural experiment. So there's that big jump. And then this is going to roll out more fluidly to the end of our sample period in 1960. Okay, so that's 3 minutes on about a 3-year project. The upshot is that this was a measurement contribution that we ultimately aimed to be a public good for other researchers to use, where we developed the first measure of TV signal strength. We confirmed that it's made for significant improvements over the previous kind of commercial market area approximation to coverage by doing some replication exercises. So revisiting these two studies on how TV affected voter turnout and how it affected kids' test scores. And we found effects about twice as large as these papers did using our new and more precise data. And that's not a surprise for those of you who have taken a stats or econometrics class. You may have learned that if you have measurement error, some noise in a variable you're putting on the right side of the regression, that's going to lead to some what we call attenuation bias. It's going to bias your estimated effects downwards. So we tried to fix some of that and indeed found larger effects. What does any of this have to do with economics? Well, in one study with a co-author, Felix Koenig, who's at Carnegie Mellon, we found some evidence that the role of TV led to somewhat earlier retirements as an hour at home alone became wildly more entertaining and compelling than it was prior to the TV's arrival. Okay, so a look at one more project on a separate topic of this is redistribution and polarization. So the sociologist Arlie Hochschild wrote in an ethnography of kind of modern conservative culture in the South. She says, repeatedly, I was to find this rift was an emotional flashpoint, and that others I talked to felt the same. This was a strong no to government-sponsored redistribution. Redistribution is a very charged and vague word. What does that refer to? It could be any number of policies that would shift resources from the top of the earnings or wealth distribution to the middle or the bottom. So some context for this, the income distribution in the United States is shifting. So I want to acknowledge there's a debate about exactly the magnitudes of these shifts, including with Gerald Otten and David Splinter. But one prominent and influential finding from the economists Thomas Piketty and Manuel Saez is that in 1970, the top 1% of households in the US took home about 9% of the total income distribution, and that by 2012, that had more than doubled to over 22%. So then one natural question in the literature is, has this shifting distribution of income affected the preferences that the public has for policies to promote redistribution? And the answer has been no. That preferences appear to be stable, and this is something of a puzzle. Moreover, there are papers finding that information treatment, so informing people about income inequality, also doesn't appear to move preferences much. The contributions that I made in this project were to show that a focus on political party changes both of those conclusions in the literature. And the one I'm just going to give you a quick look at today is that this stable average in the public's reported preferences masks a pretty stark partisan divergence. So here are the data I'm referring to. So this is showing you responses to a question that the General Social Survey has asked consistently since the 1970s. You can see on the vertical axis there. This is asking people, do you believe that the government or public programs have a role in reducing income differences in society? So it's on a scale of 1 to 7. A high number means yes, absolutely. A low number, 1, means no, absolutely not. And you can see here that, right, there's really no marked upward or downward trend, even for people who have below average income. And some scholars describe this as a puzzle in American political economy. Why is that a puzzle? Again, because you might think that as the distribution of income that the labor market is producing is becoming more and more top heavy, with more of the rewards going to top earners and fewer to the middle and bottom, that there might be more public demand for policies to redress that. So here's the Einstein level of insight that I had on this one, that this is a highly politicized topic, and that instead of income, perhaps we should be looking at party as well, right? So if I just parse these trends by the political party of the respondents, you see some action, right? So that stable average is actually masking a divergence across parties. So what this figure is showing you, that over time, we've seen more and more support for redistribution among Democrats and more opposition among Republicans. I also show in this paper that this divide is arising not because preferences are becoming more extreme or strengthening, but just because they're becoming more sorted, okay? So what do I mean by that? So there are two types of polarization you could imagine. So the most natural is this one, and that would be the emergence of some kind of bimodal distribution, right? Where you start with a lot of folks in the center, and then people are shifting out to either extreme to the left or right. But a second one would be for the overall distribution in the population to remain somewhat similar, okay? But then just to see cleaner sorting along party lines, like I've shown here in this figure, right? So all this would mean is that you see fewer Republicans who support redistribution and fewer Democrats who oppose redistribution. And that's exactly what the data show. So in 1978, more than half of Republicans were either neutral or supported this. By 2016, that had fallen to 37%. In 1978, about half, roughly 44% of Democrats were neutral or opposed redistribution. That had fallen to 30% by 2016. So here's a figure just documenting that same trend in the General Social Survey data. So briefly, what is this showing you? The changes within party in the share of each response to these questions. So if you look at the center panel, remember like a number one here is strong opposition to redistribution. And this is showing you changes from the beginning to the end of the sample. So what that shows you in the middle is you've seen a large shift of Republicans towards opposition. And then similarly in the right-hand panel, a shift among Democrats towards support for redistribution. Okay. So your mentors and professors no doubt have decades more hard-earned wisdom than I do here, but a few thoughts on research as I begin my own career. So, one thing is I'd encourage you to do the reading and to read widely. In my experience, I think you're as likely to find a strong and truly original research question in a newspaper as you are an academic paper. So both of those projects I just showed you were sparked from my reading books that really had little to do with the classes I was taking. And ultimately I did find they related to my fields. You may face some understandable pressures to hyper specialize, right? And you do want to develop an expertise in your field or in your literature. But I would just urge you to keep an open mind as you're moving through whatever media you tend to consume or as you're moving through your world. Relatedly, just try things, try stuff, lots of it, and know that ruling out paths is progress too. Like I said, I after college came to DC thinking I wanted to do macroeconomics, and I learned over a couple years at the Fed that was just not a natural home for me, but that was useful, right? So then when I started grad school, I knew I could cross that off and focus my attention elsewhere. So, I think especially at this stage, especially at this age, it's just tremendously valuable for you to get a taste of as many things as you can. So, maybe that's a summer internship in industry, even if you don't really think that's going to be the type of career that you're well suited to. Maybe it's diversifying the kinds of classes you take or people you talk to, and you just might be surprised at the type of work that you actually enjoy on a day-to-day basis. Okay, the little things are the big things. What do I mean by that? One of the comments that Donna made earlier from students about learning to fall in love with the process over the results, right? I think is a hard-learned perspective that is going to be helpful the earlier you can embrace it. So I think a lot of people are drawn to research with good reason, with some sort of high-minded ideas about science or about knowledge or about discovery. And then a few years in, you're going to find yourself, in the lab at 2 a.m. doing something mundane and repetitive. You're going to find yourself digitizing data, right? And that's often not much fun, right? It's often not really scintillating work. But you need to know that doesn't mean, that you're doing something wrong or have made a mistake. That's just the nature of doing original research, is that often it's kind of a grind. And that if you can just stack up those days, right, where you're moving forward, you'll find that that's ultimately the type of work that's required to make the contributions that you want to make. Academia and research are hard, they're difficult, but rewarding. So this is a field that's rife with rejection. You need to get used to that and not take it personally. you may find that your location choices are just somewhat constrained compared to doing other things. So for instance, if you were, if you wanted to be a nurse or be an accountant and you woke up one morning and wanted to live in Seattle or in Dallas, you could probably make that work. That's a little harder, especially in academia or in research, where you kind of need to find a real specific match, right? Where it's like, this university happens to be hiring, not just in your area, but in your specific fields in the specific year that you're finishing your PhD. And then, the hours, I think the reality is that there are relatively few successful academics who are working 40 hours a week. I think it just between teaching and research demands, particularly before you have tenure, it's a large commitment, but it is rewarding because I think you really have a special opportunity to follow your own curiosity, right? The independence that you'll have in choosing the topics you study and write about. So there's a lot of, I think, talk in our culture in the United States about following your dreams or finding your passion. And one piece of advice that I got when I was at Boise State that I always loved, I think is a bit more modest, a bit more accessible, more down to earth, is to follow your curiosity. So, you may not have one overriding the dominant passion in your life, and that's totally okay and totally normal. But there are probably always going to be things that you're curious about, right? And you kind of want to follow those breadcrumbs. And doing research, doing a PhD, right? The cliche is true. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So you really want to choose something that you're intrinsically interested in, intrinsically curious about, because otherwise in year 5, 6, 10, 20, you're not going to have the fuel to keep going. So this may make for what feels like kind of a messy or non-linear path, but know also that if you don't know exactly what you want to do right now, that also is normal and okay, and honor those instincts. I've always also liked this from the author Joseph Campbell. He said, if the path before you is clear, you are probably on someone else's. So thanks again so much, truly, for the opportunity to be here. I hope you have a wonderful time at the conference. And if we have time, happy to take a few questions.
Thank you, George.